You're welcome back. Daily Guide is starting the morning and says that NDC snubs vigilante talks. Photograph of the chairman of a party is captured here. Mugabe reports to CID, and drone service for essential medicines begins April. That's the story. And it also announces the death of the former NDC chair. BNFT says, let locals own exports. CD will see respite. That's an analyst suggesting there. And the aviation minister is suggesting that investment in new airline is still open to all. The Ghanaian Times talks about the drone story and says drone services takes off next month. The vice president photograph is here. And cabinet approves 67.3 million cedi judgment debt to construction pioneers. That's our Attorney General talking there. And government inaugurates a National Earthquake Preparedness and Response Center. The front page of the Times. The Finder this morning goes to the central region. A photograph of some students. Demo rocks University of Education, Winneba. Students warned Vice Chancellor dismissed the photographs of the demonstration there. And the drone story gets some ink on the Finder as well. And the announcement is that Kofi Nti and his two deputies are still in office. That's the Finder story. The Daily Graphic is in the central region with a big one. University of Education boils. Students protest dismissal of lecturers. Vice Chancellor, Finance Officer accused of blowing 5.7 million cedi. There, a photograph of some of the students are there. And then Cabinet approves petroleum hub in Western region, and government terminates road projects with no matching funds. That's the Daily Graphic. My guest to do the talking this morning is the Deputy Communications Director of the NPP, Kamaldeen Abdullahi. Good morning.
Good morning, Bright.
And hope you're doing great.
I'm terrific, and I guess you're doing well as well.
I'm good too. Thanks for joining us. I'm still expecting Felix Kwachiufosu in the studio. He may join us very soon. But we can start with the Daily Graphic this morning. And the story, starting from the front page, says that students of the University of Education, Winneba, disrupted academic work on the North Campus of the university yesterday following a protest against the dismissal of some lecturers by the governing council of the university. The students also demanded the removal of the Vice Chancellor, Reverend Professor Anthony Afubroni, accusing him of running the institution with an iron fist. Last year, the university witnessed a power struggle which ended with the removal of the immediate past Vice Chancellor, Professor Mawuto Avoke. Now, apart from the demonstration, which was against the dismissal of the president of the University of Education branch of UTAC, Dr. Frimpong Kechiri Duku, and the principal of the colleges of languages at the Jumako, Professor Ephraim Inso, there is a raging turf war between the Member of Parliament, Mr. Alexander Fenyo-Makin, and some alumni of the university on the one hand and the Vice Chancellor on the other. The demonstrations students were told said the dismissal of the senior members of the university was improper, and therefore they need to be reinstated. Now, a Minister of State in charge of tertiary education and a team visited the university. Addressing the media after the 3-hour meeting with the university authorities, Professor Yanka expressed disappointment at the development at the university and gave the governing council a 3-week ultimatum for them to get things back to normal at the university. According to him, occasional misunderstandings in the university did not promote good academic work, and that it was important that management took immediate steps to ensure a congenial learning environment on the campus. This morning, we're told that the students are back on the streets of the university. Come on, let's start our conversation. The president at the investiture of the Vice Chancellor told him to reconcile the university. Certainly, this has not happened.
It has not. It hasn't happened. Once again, good morning to you. Good morning to the cherished viewers out there. And of course, to the fraternity of the New Patriotic Party. We had our NEC and National Council meeting yesterday to look at how the reorganization of the party will go on in the newly created regions. Clearly, we have said that by May 5th, 4th and 5th, we're going to be having elections to determine the full executive complement of our party in those regions. I wish the party well, and I believe that we're going to work hard to ensure that we get to where we're going to get to. As our national organizer and his team are on the ground mobilizing and bringing the party folks to understand that this nagging issue about vigilantism, about militia, is nipped in the bud. We are committed as a party, and we are always committed to ensuring that good governance is what is key to us as a country. Now, Bright, not too long ago, we got the story about KNUST, which wasn't palatable at all, to the extent that students had to go on rioting, destruction of properties worth several thousands of Ghana cedis. You know, we had injuries recorded as a result of some, you know, mayhem visited on students, as it were. I mean, all these things had happened. I thought we would have taken a cue from some of these happenings, especially when it has to do with our public universities, especially when it has to do with our higher institutions of learning. Now, if you are entrusted with a job, you rightly put it in your intro that the president had cause to admonish the leadership of the university during the investiture that, look, ensure that feuding factions, if they exist, are brought together, and of course, you ensure that harmony prevails on the campus. What is interesting about this University of Education, Winneba, has to do with the member of parliament for that area, who of course has so much interest in the operations, or if you like, in the happenings in the university. I recall that he had cause to, you know, back Bruni Afful. He did a lot of work for Bruni Afful to get there. However, today, the reverse is the case. The same person he was on same page with, of course, they've departed from each other in terms of views and in terms of what is happening on campus. What I want to say is that as leaders, we owe it to the people the tenets of rule of law. We owe it to the people decisions that we're going to take that would ensure that all inclusion, as it were, approach is seen. Now, if this is not seen, I believe, obviously, there will be those who would come out or rise up against it. Now, this issue about lecturers, senior lecturers being dismissed, you know, local UTAC president dismissed. The argument from the Vice Chancellor's office is that they followed the disciplinary procedure as laid down within their, you know, indoor management group.
Right.
The argument also from the other side is that no, the dismissal was arbitrary, and that at the end of the day, they are not okay with it. Reasons cited included you did not exhaust internal arrangements or grievances procedure, then you resorted to court, hence the dismissal. All these things have come out. But I remember that critical stakeholders on the university has to do also with the students. I'm aware that the level 400 students have had cause to complain that, look, our nutrition lecturer was, in this case, Dr. Sapper, who is saying us true, when we are going to leave school around July, has just been sacked. He's prepared us throughout the course. We don't know our fate. So how well did this decision come out? I mean, how well did the authorities take the decision, as it were? So I believe that where we are today, I'm happy the Minister of State in charge of tertiary education has visited with his team. I'm happy that I'm told that yesterday they had fruitful discussions and they've put together, I mean, you know, channels on the ground or measures on the ground to ensure that all will be well, all will be fine with the university, then we can move on. But this media fight, back and forth, this one says that one says that, is quite inimical to the growth of the university, and it's not going to help us at all. Interestingly, Professor Avia and Co, who had problems with, you know, Afenyo Markins, today are on same page with him. Today are okay. And I don't know how actually events have turned out, but what is important is that what does the law say? What does the rule say? What are the measures put in place to ensure that there is sanity prevailing on that campus? And at the end of the day, the students are going to benefit, lecturers are going to benefit, authorities of the school indeed are not seen as people who appear as totalitarians, as it were, as they allege. So clearly, It's an interest, a matter of interest, and we all need to get on board to ensure that we nip this in the bud in terms of the brouhaha happenings on our public
Should the Vice
universities.
Chancellor step aside?
Well, I'm yet to get the full complement of the happenings. I mean, I'll be jumping the gun to say that you step aside, you do that, you do whatever. Like I said, his quarters has the argument that our actions are grounded in law.
Right.
Now, the other quarters also say, no, what you have done is contrary to what the rule says, that we cannot be taken up. I believe that a discourse is supposed to happen. That is why we have a minister and his team visit them. And that is why I believe that there has been a dialogue on the table. Maybe as time unfolds, we're going to have, you know, the full picture, and then we'll be able to make very sound judgments.
But the president gave him a job and gave him a mandate, said, fix this problem. He has not fixed it. The president knew there was a problem there.
Absolutely.
And so he said, bring everybody on board.
Yes.
Professor Alfred Boni has not been able to do.
Like I said, I'm sure a report will come from the minister who visited to the presidency. I'm sure that laid down rules will be looked at as to whether or not he's supposed to step aside or he's supposed to be on, in office. All these things will be considered. But I would not like to jump the gun to say that, look, step aside because of XYZ for now. I would want us to get to the bottom of the matter. Authorities or leaders who are supposed to play roles in it, if they do have the power or the mandate given them, then of course they would use that mandate to see to it that sanity prevails. I'm
grateful. He's a deputy communications director of the NPP. Let me introduce a former minister, deputy minister Felix Kwatufo of the NDC, joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. Right.
No, I'm okay. Thanks for joining us. And we started on there was some issues with unity. Now, this is where we are. This morning, we were told students are back on the street protesting for his removal and then bringing back of some dismissed lecturers. This is certainly not a university that is reconciled.
Well, right. I think that this, for me, highlights a complete failure on the part of government to manage the tertiary education sector. Because you do know that this represents only one of a series of misunderstandings and tensions that have brewed on various campuses. Not too long ago, we had to grapple with the unsightly situation at KNUST, where some policies of the university resulted in violent demonstrations and a disturbance of the peace. Government completely bungled that process as well. Political patronage and interference was placed on the front burner, and due process and the need to respect academic freedoms and the statutes of the university were completely shunted aside. And a back and forth led to an unnecessary delay in the reopening of the university. Eventually, sanity prevailed, and government was compelled, because various stakeholders within the university community insisted that the right things be done. At the time that the KNUST tensions were brewing, we also knew that there were serious undercurrents at the University of Education, Winneba. We had a situation where people believed that political considerations had been brought to bear on the relationship between government on the one hand and the leadership of the university. Persons deemed to be sympathetic to a particular political party, in this case the NDC, were suspected to have been unfairly targeted, and things set in place for their removal in order that persons deemed more friendly and sympathetic to the NPP can be put in their place. So you recall that a series of allegations were made against the then Vice Chancellor, Professor Avoke, and a number of high-ranking officials of the university. Some court proceedings were brought against them by persons who were suspected to have been influenced by the New Patriotic Party. And eventually, it led to the removal of Professor Avoke. You also recall that at the time that the president was attending the investiture, he was cautioned that that sort of behavior would appear to give endorsement to some level of wrongdoing, and that perhaps as president, it was advisable that he stayed away from the milieu. Absolutely. He stayed away from the milieu so that the issues come to their logical conclusions. And when there is absolute clarity on the way forward, the president can then perform any function that he deems necessary regarding the running of that particular university. He did not heed that advice. He attended the investiture of Professor Afro-Boni and created the impression that all was well. You mentioned the admonition that he made.
Are you sure he felt it was well? Because he asked it.
Yeah, but if all was not well, what was the point? No, if all was not well and the university was not together, what stopped him from initiating processes to ensure that that happened before he gave endorsement to any actions that the other side may find offensive? He didn't do that. Again, he was motivated by partisanship and a desire to ensure that his party captures that university, and persons deemed to be sympathetic to the NDC were victimized in the course of that process. So the president did not heed sound counsel and appears to have imposed a vice chancellor who himself has not been accepted by the university community, and that is why we are having this particular turmoil. So this whole brouhaha can be pinned down to complete mismanagement of the tertiary education sector. The unrest that we are seeing stems from inadequate government responses to emerging issues in the tertiary education sector. When the KNUST issue started, you found that government did it. Instead of moving in quickly and playing a mediatory role between the feuding factions in the confusion, they sought to take sides. And when the issues blew over, they then purported to take over the administration of the university, albeit unlawfully, until sanity prevailed when pressure was brought to bear on them. A similar thing, in my view, is happening at UEW. The other point that we need to stress is what I believe to be undue and inappropriate interference in the affairs of the university by the Member of Parliament, my own brother, Afenyo-Markins. He may be a stakeholder by virtue of being a Member of Parliament for the constituency. He may have a genuine interest in ensuring that the university runs smoothly and there are no problems. But his posturing would appear to reflect that of somebody who perceives himself as the overlord or kingmaker of the university, and that a particular vice chancellor or a particular leadership must be in his good books in order to be able to function properly. I find that completely worrying. He has no locus or mandate. The fact that you are a Member of Parliament and the university falls within your jurisdiction or the constituency does not mean that you can walk into the university and dictate how the university is run.
That's a fought on principle.
No, but you see, again, there's no principle. What I see is a man who is acting on the basis of convenience. That when he suits him, he will kick against the leadership of the university. Because what is it that he saw in Professor Afro-Boni that made him give him the support that he gave him? And what was it that compelled him or motivated him to fight against Professor Avoke? I am saying that he has no locus to do the things he is doing. And we must rise up and speak out against it. Parliament must call him to order. If every parliamentarian within whose constituency universities operate behave the way that Afenyo-Markins is behaving, there will be no peace. So I find his interference completely distasteful. And he must be called to order. We must not, as a people, allow a situation where a Member of Parliament uses his office to seek to interfere in the affairs of any university. There may be genuine issues. If there are issues of procurement breaches or breaches of the law, by all means, let due process take its course. But under no circumstance must an MP deem himself the overlord of a university. He does not need to approve of a particular leadership of the university for the university to work. The universities were set up on the basis of law. There are statutes guiding the operations of the university. There's a governing council or a governing board that is put in place to supervise the running of the university. There's a vice chancellor and his management team. If there's any difficulty, and as a stakeholder or a Member of Parliament for the Futu constituency, he wants to draw attention to the problems and engage so that the problems can be resolved, that must be done within the context of the rules. He cannot go and interfere and launch attacks at vice chancellors and seek to remove them at will. What has happened shows that he exercised bad judgment when he rallied against Professor Avoke. Today, he is crying for justice for Professor Avoke. Was he not the very individual at the center of the mistreatment of Professor Avoke? So what was it that compelled him to behave that way? And what is that has changed?
Everybody is doing the same things.
But the point I'm making is that he is not only, he is not only accusing Professor Afro-Boni of doing the wrong things, he is actually saying, in effect, essentially, that Professor Avoke did no wrong. That is what he is saying now. But the point I'm making is that it does not lie in the mouth of the member of parliament to determine the fate of a vice chancellor or any member of leadership of the university for that matter.
Should the VC go?
Of course. I mean, the same standard that was applied to Professor Avoke must be applied to Professor Afro-Boni. If you come under credible accusations of wrongdoing, the most appropriate thing to do is to step aside for thorough, independent investigations to be carried out into the matter. And pending the resolution of that matter, you must not be in a position to interfere with the investigations. So when the investigations are concluded and it is found that the allegations were untrue, you return to post. If they were true, whatever sanctions have to be meted out to you must be meted out to you. But the issues must be clearly delineated. The alleged wrongdoing must be isolated and separated from the undue interference from the MP
the member of parliament
and the MPP as a political party. Also, the president must draw useful lessons from this one, in that he must show restraint in these matters. He must not seek to bulldoze his way. He must not place the interest of his political party above the interest of the nation and the universities as a whole. Okay. And therefore, when he is advised against taking some actions that can undermine the progress of the university, he must heed it and stop projecting power in a manner that is detrimental to the interest of the university.
Okay, come on, briefly, wrap up on this. And then
I find it very difficult to understand my brother Felix when he seeks to say that the president should have heeded to what he called some sound counsel prior to the investiture, of course, of Afro-Boni. I mean, clearly, I stated earlier on, we are a nation governed by rules and regulations, and if you like, call them laws. Now, question is, listening to Felix, I'm not too sure that what the president did by attending the investiture of someone who has been duly appointed by the council of the university.
Professor Tukpa said that the case was in court.
No, but of course, like I said, we are a nation. That's why I prefix my submission with the nation of laws and regulations. Clearly, if what happened was untoward, was not within the tenets of the law, I'm not sure a fine lawyer like the president would have attended it. No. Legally speaking, when you listen to Felix very well, he cannot fault the president for even attending the investiture in the first place, because legally it is correct. But for you to say that, look, because there was some sound counsel, some so-called sound counsel out there, because of that he should have heeded and of course put what is legally mandated aside. I mean, for me, I struggle to understand what the point he's trying to make. Okay. Yes, there has always been, before even he continued, he cited KNUST. There has always been confusion. There has always been problems. How well are we going to resolve them? As we say, human nature is that whether you like it or not, you're going to be confronted with issues and problems along the line. You make sure that your actions and inactions are within what the law says. If the council had deemed Bruni as the person to be the vice chancellor of the university and had cause to appoint him as per the laws says, then of course the president attends the investiture,
and that position is being challenged in court.
Was that position challenged in court? Was that the issue?
His Afro-Boni's VC was being challenged.
Avoke and Co were in court, all right. But question: what was the issue? Was this his mandate? Was it the time for the council to appoint a new vice chancellor or not? Yes, he had elapsed, but he says no. My time was for me to continue. Then the argument was like, no. We are supposed to have in place a new, if you like, VC. That is what brought Bruni. And Bruni's investiture went on. Like I said, it was within the law. Then the president attended it. You say the no. Put that aside and then listen to what some sound counsel coming. For me, I mean, trying to draw in the president, trying to draw in this, when of course it doesn't legally fall within the legal
tell me this,
I think
and
it's unfortunate.
So the man has been removed. The man has been removed. He's gone to court challenging his removal. You are putting a new person in his place. It doesn't impact, a court issue doesn't impact on
Law 322 say about the university's arrangement. I have had courts. I took my time to read the law and understand it.
Okay, so
now were they within the time frame? Were they within the time for them to appoint someone? What were the issues? Was the issue in court bordering on that particular, mandate? No. If it wasn't bordering on that mandate and the law had mandated them, they went ahead and did it. And that's what I'm saying. Legally speaking, you cannot fault the person. You cannot fault that. But yet, you are talking about morality. That some sound counsel was out there. And I'm saying that what is legal prevails. It is not the sound counsel that you're talking about. However, the president, even attending the investigation, said, look, I am seeing that we have some seeming, if you like, confusion here, or some small problems. Make sure as a leader, you go ahead to ensure that some sanity prevails. If it has failed, it's human.
Okay, I'm grateful. Come on, a quick one.
You see, when you are a leader, you exercise what we call sound judgment. Your actions and decisions must be well considered so that when you take them, they can stand scrutiny and they can stand the test of time. That is not what has happened in the case of the University of Education, Winneba. You recall that when the KNUST imbroglio broke out, functionaries of the MPP, even before the matters had been delved into, pronounced the then Vice-Chancellor, or the current Vice-Chancellor, persona non grata. I recall that the youth organizer of the New Patriotic Party, Nanabi, said that Professor Obri Danso was history. It showed a certain political intent to punish persons deemed not to be sympathetic to the MPP. And so instead of tackling the problem at its roots and ensuring that time-tested solutions were found to do, it is political rather than adherence to the rule of law that has become the problem. At UEW, listen.
The law.
No, you see,
listen, the matter.
But that has
the advocate's case in court did not matter.
That had been contested. Look, that had been contested. The claim. Oh, please. When you see, when the claim that the matters had been resolved was contested fiercely by the legal representatives of Professor Avoke. So once the matter was under contestation, the president ought to have stayed away from the melee until such time that all the issues were resolved. And once they were resolved and there was finality to it and the pronouncements by the court was very clear, he could then go in as an invited guest to superintend the investiture of any vice-chancellor that the university's own processes and arrangements put in place. He didn't do this. And I'm saying that it stems from a certain belief that once the MPP wins power, they must adopt a winner-takes-all, all-or-nothing approach, a zero-sum game approach to governance. That if you are not sympathetic to the MPP, there's no way that you must occupy any position of responsibility in this country. That, in my view, is what informed the removal of Avoke and the investiture of Afro-Broni. In Afeno-Makin's own words, he worked for Afro-Broni.
He said it.
How does a member of parliament work for the appointment of a vice-chancellor? He himself has recalled the laws governing the operations of the university. Those laws make provision for the selection and investiture of a vice-chancellor. Nowhere in those laws is it said that the member of parliament must play a role. But the member of parliament was representing the interests of the MPP. And so processes were circumvented. And a new chancellor was installed. Vice-chancellor was installed. Today, that same member of parliament is saying that he was mistaken and that injustice was meted out to Professor Avoke and that justice will be done by them. The same MP.
Okay.
So it tells you clearly that the considerations that went into the considerations that went into the removal of Avoke and appointment of Afro-Broni were political rather than procedural.
Okay, that is my view. Come on, let's move on. Let's talk about Kamal. I have a few minutes.
Respectfully.
No. Kamal, I am not allowing you. No. Kamal, I think you've made your point.
With respect, please.
Kamal, you've made your point.
Just give me a minute to respond to this. Where he draws in this impression created out there by him that, look, some political actors within the New Patriotic Party had cause to say that, look, XYZ had happened. You understand? And therefore, he's trying to say that we were fighting for elements we believe were part of the party. For example, our youth organizer. My point here is that, look, there has also been, and he's talking about some polarization of the sector. My point here is that there has also been concerns that some vice who was appointed by the ex-Wal administration also were deemed to be NDC. You understand? Of course, when you talk about polarization, then you are looking at both sides of the coin. One side is for the MPP, the other side is NDC. Are we all poking our nose into the governing or into the arrangement of our public universities? Yes, if we are doing it. Is it better? It's not better. Then let's prove up. Now on Afenyo Markin is not representing MPP interests. No. He is an MPP member of parliament for that area. Does not mean that the MPP is saying Afenyo Markin go do XYZ for us. Let us not create that impression out there. Afenyo Markin,
by Felix, could he be represented?
By Felix. Felix himself said it.
Okay.
That yes, you are an MP, you are a stakeholder within that. However, you have your roles. Maybe not completely enshrined in the laws of the, if you like, the institution. However, once you are a stakeholder as well, and you have an interest as well, you can at least come into the happenings of the university. In this case, let's not forget that Afenyo Markin was one of the lawyers of a particular party. Aside he being a politician, he was a lawyer. And being a lawyer of a particular political party, in particular, in
the case,
he
was a lawyer.
Does not stop him from contributing, from playing a role in ensuring that the legal issues raised are addressed or were addressed.
Okay, come on, I'm grateful.
I'm grateful. If you listen to Afenyo Markin's rhetoric, okay, he is speaking as though he is the final arbiter in this matter. Already, he is threatening that Afuboni will be removed. Yesterday, he convened a meeting of the national president of UTAG, the local UEW president of UTAG, and a number of stakeholders. And I am questioning the capacity in which he is acting. Okay. Because why? At the very least, there's a minister of education. There's a minister of state in charge of education. There's a National Council on Tertiary Education. These are the accredited state officials and agencies who can have locus in the matter and seek to mediate whatever conflict exists in the university. The MP can be invited to play a certain role, but he cannot unilaterally start acting and speaking in a manner that suggests that he is the one going to determine the outcome of this particular matter. That is what I am against. And I think we must stop it.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. He has been a counsel to a party in this case, isn't it?
No. Let's move on. I have 5 minutes more. Let's move on. 5 more minutes on it.
Okay, right.
Daily Graphic says disbanding vigilantes don't limit it to. He's suggesting that other parties and all stakeholders should be involved. We're talking about security of the nation, and we need all hands on deck to stop it. Come on, briefly. Now, the president's against mediators. He says NDC, NPP should be the ones to talk. It looks like he's against a lot of people.
The president is against mediators?
Well, that's what the president said.
Is that what you're saying?
The NDC, NPP should do the talk.
And did you listen to the president when he brought the proposal, or he made the proposal in parliament during the State of the Nation address?
Well, if
you are saying he's against mediators?
If I didn't get it, you let me know.
No.
The president has written to the NDC suggesting that he doesn't understand why the NPP, NDC cannot talk, and that they should do the talking because they are those who have been running this country.
Right, sometimes.
Looks like he seemed to be on the other side.
With a great respect, sometimes the way we put issues, of course, or the media, push the issues on board, appears problematic.
What's the president's stance on this?
Absolutely. So that's why I asked you whether or not you listened to the president when he made the proposal in parliament. What he said was so simple. He said, look, it is my proposal that both parties write to each other, sit on a round table, see how they're going to nip this in the bud, not without some security agencies' presence, or some other institutions, or some institutions also taking part in it. Of course, I remember clearly he mentioned the security agencies as well, how well they will take part, and then of course they will also be sitting on with them for them to determine how they can get this, nagging issue solved, as it were. You see, what is material in this matter is that the president has shown time and again that, look, I am not for this vigilantism, I am not for it, and I will not be for it. To the extent that we had to go to parliament, or he had to go to parliament and made a pronouncement, to the extent that he had to call on parties to at least ensure that we sit down to look at it, of course shows that he has given some commitment to it, as it were. However, some people believe that, look, the president ought to have done X, Y, Z before we will come in.
That is the opposition. Said that they should bring Peace Council and immediate.
You write to him.
The president writes back and says, no, the two parties go and sit down and talk.
The two parties are those who have been pointed at
What's the president's stance on this? What is the president's
stance? Is simple. His party, the government and the party are ready to ensure that we nip this in the bud or we fight this and disband it completely.
Is he allowing a mediator in the conversation between the two parties? He wrote to the NDC and said that, no, he doesn't believe in a mediator.
You see, first of all, we need to set the tone ourselves. First of all, we need to start it as a party. Yes, other suggestions can come on board. We all have to look at how we're going to sit down and then, of course, solve this problem that we all see as not too good for our democracy. The commitment must be shown in the first place.
Right.
Now, if you go ahead to say that, look, yes, we have heard you. This is our suggestion. Let's move on. This is the way we want it to happen before we can avail ourselves. You are even giving conditions before even you come in. You fight or you flaw the commitment I spoke about. Okay, you flaw the commitment that I spoke about. I thought that at the end of the day, if we come out with that so much conditionalities and say, look, we think this is a problem, you also think this is a problem, why can't we all sit down and then forge ahead?
So let's clarify.
In the course of that,
the president is suggesting that NDC and PP go and sit down and talk first before we talk about bringing a mediator. Is that it?
Have we shown that commitment as political parties?
Well, yeah, I think so.
Have we shown that commitment as political parties?
I think so. That's the president's stance.
And that's what I'm saying. What the president said, have we shown that commitment as political parties to even begin the negotiation process or the dialogue process?
Okay.
Have we done that? No, right. We haven't done that.
I thought you would tell me the president's stance on this.
The president's stance is simple. I told you that. I said his stance is that he is not for this vigilantism and he's not for it on any day. Okay. And that, look, let's ensure that dialogue is open for us to move. But the president makes a very important point, aside even with dialogue. And in fact, as if he had anticipated this, that the parties may not even sit down at all. He added a second option, which people don't even talk about. He said, look, the legislation process.
Okay.
He said, let me add this. What he said was that, what the president said was that, where we are not even getting the understanding, where we are not getting the comprehension by both parties, where we are going to have problems. Of course, he had anticipated some of these disagreements. Now, if we're not getting it, then he's left with no option than to initiate a legislation process to see to it that we deal with it. And for me, I believe that angle is must be looked at.
Okay.
This back and forth is not going to help us. You know why? When you take the political, I'm just landing. When you take the Political Parties Act, for instance, the Political Parties Act clearly tells you that, look, there is this is the way political parties are supposed to be organized, especially take section 3 thereabout, where it tells you some prohibitions or certain prohibitions are even seen. Okay. Therefore, my point here is that if the legislation process is supposed to be taken, it can be taken or initiated by the executive to get parliament to sit on this matter. Then we can all get a very fine law which prohibits such activity within political parties for us to move.
Felix,
so the president's stand is clear.
Looks like the president wants the NPP NDC to sit first, perhaps before agreeing on any other thing.
Well, it is obvious at this stage that the president and the NPP are isolated in this matter. Because only yesterday, 12 civil society organizations held a press conference at which they indicated that they are willing and able to participate in the process to ensure that the deliberations that go on lead to tangible outcomes that resolve the problem. I have seen letters from the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center in which they express readiness to host the mediation talks and to offer some facilitation. I have seen a letter from the Catholic Secretariat in which they express a willingness to participate. The National Peace Council has accepted the NDC's invitation or proposal to be the mediator for these talks. It appears that it is only the president and the NPP who are opposed to a broader discussion about the problem with a view to finding long-lasting solutions to it. And one has to question why that obstinate stance. You see, the president's call, while on the surface appearing genuine and well-intentioned, suffers a major credibility deficit.
Why?
Because it has come to light that even as he has waxed lyrical and dabbled in rhetoric which suggests that he wants the matter resolved, secretly he is supervising the recruitment of these same thugs into state security agencies and is supervising a situation where the NPP is secretly training some of them.
Well, I mean, placement agents.
It is not true. No, there are 3 issues here. When Mr. Isaac Akumia, aka Double, appeared before the commission, it became quite clear that somebody who did not have basic credentials to be in such an elite security agency found his way there only because he was an MPP aficionado. And the same can be said for many of the Invisible and Delta Forces elements who have been identified as having been recruited into national security. Then the letter from the Upper West Regional Security Liaison emerged, showing that he was coordinating the recruitment of MPP thugs at state expense.
We told he doesn't have the power to do that.
Well, he did that. He did that. The letter was quite clear. And indeed, he confirmed it in subsequent interviews with media houses. Maybe because of the exposure, they have been compelled to abandon the plans. But it was very clear what they were doing. And then the DI exposure. And the plethora of untenable excuses and explanations that have been offered. What is obvious is that whereas the president is saying one thing, he is practicing another. And this has led a huge credibility gap in the whole process. We are saying that this problem goes beyond just political parties talking. Okay. And that there is deep mistrust between us because of these issues. And therefore, there is a need for external partners to be involved in the process to ensure that when we go and sit and talk, we do so in an atmosphere of frankness, in an atmosphere of mutual respect, and in an atmosphere of mutual trust, so that ultimately whatever conclusions and recommendations emerge out of those talks can be implemented in a verifiable manner. But the president and the MPP are against this,
right,
because they have something to write.
Come on, sorry, I have to run. I'm grateful.
Yeah.
So you mean what Felix said about the president is the truth?
But you said what you have to say.
Well, that's the truth.
But it's the truth.
No, come on, that is the truth. I think you've made your point. No, come on, I think you've made your point.